One of the big things in DC is blackmail. This is how it's done. This is how you control someone of influence. Sometimes you're not trying to get data from a network. Sometimes you're trying to manipulate an organization from the inside. They had very influential people submit because they had stuff on them. This is the next generation of nation-state cyber warfare.
Welcome to the Edge of Wonder. We have a very special episode for you with a slightly more serious tone compared to our previous episodes. But we hope you will keep watching till the end because this is about very sensitive information, social media, and how your personal data is being compromised.
On this episode, we had the amazing opportunity to sit down with James Scott, who is the Senior Fellow and co-founder of the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technology, Senior Fellow at the Center for Cyber Influence Operations Studies, and Center for Space Warfare Studies. And that's the longest title we've ever heard, but rightly so. This guy knows so much.
All right. So we hope you enjoy part one of this two-part special series.
So without further ado, let's meet James Scott. Okay, hey everybody, we're here with James Scott, Senior Fellow at the Center for Space Warfare Studies. James, thanks a lot for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So Ben and I are actually pretty excited to have James with us because he has a lot of information, a lot of which we can't talk about on the screen, but we're going to try to get as much out of him as we can.
Very true.
All right, so James, thanks a lot for being here.
Yeah, great.
Okay, so what did we want to talk about first here? The first thing I kind of wanted to discuss with you was any information that we can get about our cell phones. Everybody out there is using cell phones right now. There's a lot of information on our cell phones, and a lot can be done with code that I think a lot of people aren't aware of.
Well, especially with like the whole thing with Facebook and the news about monitoring phone activity.
People's data, all that stuff. I mean, how can we be manipulated with our phones? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can throw your phone at you and it would really hurt you.
That is true. Please don't do that.
I'd manipulate your psychology with the, by hitting you on the head, which one? The phone, we have this thing happening now with, it's called cyborgification.
Right.
And cyborgification is just the technological extension of oneself in order to make up for the vulnerabilities in the human condition, right? So the cell phone can be used for good to call your mom, but it can also be weaponized against you as a surveillance tool. It's something that people take to the bathroom with them, that you take it everywhere. So you have multiple things that can happen. Your GPS, I mean, if you go to Facebook, since you're talking about Facebook, just from the app, it tracks you. And I don't really see the reason why the Facebook app should be collecting that type of metadata.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't want Facebook to know I'm in the bathroom with it.
I know. So, but dude Zuckerberg knows.
Yeah.
He knows. He knows you're in the bathroom because you're that important.
What if
he
the
wants to know.
camera turns on, you're looking at it?
So that's another thing. It's not just the metadata. It's not just the GPS. It's they call it hot miking, and you can there's camera activation malware as well. And this is very common. It's on your computer. People put on your computer. It's in the intelligence community. It's a blackmail tool. The vulnerability isn't necessarily just the phone, but it's the apps that you have on your phone. You should always have your privacy settings maximized. Any apps that are not absolutely necessary, you should just delete off your phone, and then reboot your phone. You know. Because a lot of times you have remnants of the app in there.
I was going to say, it accumulates over time and stuff too.
Well, so I deleted Facebook off my phone, and for 24 hours, even 48 hours, it still said a deleted app was still using like my battery power, and I was like, what in the world is going on? This is crazy.
We advised to Congress, the intelligence community. I got an SMS text one time. I thought it was from my son, who's in college. It was a spoofed thing because I responded and I wasn't getting a response back, so I was getting worried. I called him. He's like, I didn't call you. You know, I didn't text you, whatever. Yeah. I had pressed on a link that delivered a payload into my phone. I didn't realize until like 2 days later, I couldn't keep the battery charged. And so I took it to a friend of mine at DARPA, and he found a hot mic camera activation malware. So they were listening to me, and I don't know, maybe seeing, I don't know, but both payloads were on the phone. But this stuff is normal, like in our industry. A lot of politicians don't understand. They don't have cyber hygiene.
Right.
So,
Of course not.
of course not.
I mean,
But they're writing legislation about that.
You know, I'm not saying anything bad about them. They're a little bit old. Like my mom with the cell phone, my dad with the cell phone. You know.
So one of the big things in DC is blackmail. That's how you control a politician.
Yeah.
And when you get somebody, you have a guy that, or lady or whatever, that is, it's 3 a.m. and they're behind their computer, you don't know what they're doing. That's when the Russian nation state, their APTs, the Chinese nation state APTs, Muslim Brotherhood as part of the cyber caliphate. Yeah, so this is how it's done. This is how you control someone of influence. I mean, I don't do it. I mean, I'm just saying, like, this is how they do it.
Right.
This is one of the ingredients. A payload is compiled tools. They call it malware. So, or ransomware, I mean, whatever. But it scans your system, finds the vulnerability on your computer, in your server, whatever, and it delivers tools. So it's a hacking term. And so an example, I deal a lot with critical infrastructure. So one thing that most nation states want to get access to are critical infrastructure executives with elevated privileges, which means they have access to IP, electronic health records, like the actual treasure trove of all that data. So it's within the best interest of our adversary to go after those guys. So you do a thing called spear phishing, where you act like you're a recruiter. You give them a call, hey look, I got this job, twice what you're making now. I'm gonna send you their offer. Don't tell anybody, keep this on download. And then they deliver that, and what it does, it'll hot mic, have camera mic activation, but it also has things like remote access Trojans. So the objective then becomes to get into the network at that critical infrastructure facility, maybe the grid, to get into the network and move laterally throughout the network in search of the data, okay? And then you set up the remote access Trojans to be able to pull out that data. And you know, it gets more specific than that, but I think that's easy enough to understand. Your phone, your Apple Watch, like in my industry, I can't have that watch.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, there's too many listening to things
Yeah,
on it, right?
yeah. So, and then you actually, at the NSA, you have to take them and put them in a locker, which is a Faraday cage. You know, you can't even bring your laptop. What's that?
A lead locker or something?
It's like, I don't know, it's made of a material where you can't send frequencies out to whatever.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay, so earlier we were kind of talking about different things they can actually do with the phone and send out signals to even manipulate the human body. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, frequencies demonstrated that they can have an effect, good or bad, on the individual's psychology, the brainwaves. Malware, as this is hyper-evolving, this space, nation-state advanced persistent threats, the Russian actor, the Chinese. Sometimes you're not trying to get data from a network. Sometimes you're trying to manipulate an organization from the inside. You want there to be disunity. You're trying to, from a psychological warfare perspective, you're trying to do reputational harm to the individual, make it seem like this other person is saying this about them. You know what I mean? You kind of like influence operations, information warfare. But this is more psychological warfare, so it's a little different. So this particular payload, it's just code, okay? So as part of the payload, maybe it's just a frequency that emits from the computer where you can't hear it, but it has a physical effect.
Interesting.
Migraines, vomiting, aggressive behavior. And it surprises me that nobody's really talking about this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
this is
really
the next
fascinating.
generation of nation-state cyber warfare.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say
Yeah.
too. I mean, like, for example, we're talking about China. They could. What if they had this technology? Could they put this on like on a mass scale, like on a cell phone
Well,
tower?
you wouldn't want it to get out. So
Okay.
what you would do is you would focus on the consulate system, or the State Department, or like a critical agency, a critical silo within an important agency.
Wow.
That's, you would target it because you wouldn't want it to get out.
Right.
Right.
Because with malware, there are signatures and there's timestamps. So you can forensically analyze this stuff to get a good idea of where it's coming from. In a few years, after this type of payload becomes more commonplace, you have the Russians who will make an extremely sophisticated variant of this malware and leave it in a network where it's found, just as a demonstration of skill. That's part of psychological warfare with nation states too.
That's crazy.
So I think this will come on real quick, just like the weaponization of metadata, like we saw with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, with what we saw during the elections between the Russians, the Chinese, special interest groups, how they were using metadata, putting it into a big data analytics algorithm, customizing a psychographic targeting tool, and weaponizing cookies. So now, if you're a pro-Trump guy, all you're seeing is pro-Trump, 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 pro-Trump everywhere. Banners are following you everywhere. Facebook weaponizes the platform against their users. They've been doing that for years. Google does the same thing. Twitter does the same thing. They mute hashtags that are actually organically viral.
So yeah, I think the most fascinating part, like just kind of going back to what you're talking about, like they can just manipulate part of the human body to make it do stuff.
This stuff's very real. Just look at this research. Look at what DARPA is experimenting with.
Yeah.
You know what they're doing in Israel with their science. This stuff. It's funny. I mean, I take it for granted because I'm around this stuff all the time down there with a think tank. You know, but it surprises me how little people understand about the weaponization of code.
Yeah.
And the manipulation of code, the manipulation of perception by weaponizing metadata, like the combination, the variation, you know, and the number of actors that are in this space. You know, and the thing is, you know, Cambridge Analytica was the least sophisticated from a big data science perspective. The thing that made them potent was their blackmail. And blackmail is very, like I said, blackmail is very real. And so they had very influential people submit because they had stuff on them. All you do is step back and, okay, well, what can be done with code? This is how nation states are thinking. How can we inflict as much pain into this key person quick?
And this is more a question for the audience than it is for me, but why would someone want to inflict that kind of pain on someone? Like, give me a scenario maybe where there's an influential person and they're doing something someone doesn't like. Who's the kind of person that would try to inflict that pain, and what would they be trying to do?
Sure. So you look at a nation state like China. They have their 13th five-year plan. And psychological warfare, influence operations, all that stuff is rolled up in that plan. So what they would do is target an ambassador that we have. Reputational harm comes first, real or imagined. So they'll make something up if they don't have anything on the guy. They will follow this guy, learn his habits, how he takes his coffee, like everything. This is their espionage. The Chinese are clunky and awkward with their espionage. The stealth and sophistication comes from the US, Israel, and Russia. And the hacking style is the same too. So you have the stealth and sophistication like chess coming from Russia. And then you have loud and clangy coming from the Chinese.
Kind of like how their products work in real life.
Yeah, really. Yeah, with built-in vulnerabilities. Yeah, built-in vulnerabilities as part of the Chinese 13 five-year plan. A lot of people don't understand that they are required to have a Chinese Communist Party person on the manufacturing floor of every manufacturer facility. Now,
that's a party member.
Yeah, yes, and you have an iPhone, which is now being manufactured in China.
So who knows what's in my iPhone?
Exactly.
I guess, yeah.
Wow.
So that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, it's so that's who. So that's how that works. And now, like DC is full of like private intelligence firms. So we contribute to some as well for national security. There are some that do not play by the rules. So we have a problem with that in DC between politicians. They'll have a political action committee. They're getting money for whatever. They will take the initiative to go and intimidate this other guy to signing on to this piece of legislation because the signature's needed. So that's the kind of thing. So it's, and everybody has something on everybody down there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, if you do, we're going to mention this. We're going to talk about your 17-year-old girlfriend. You know,
Jeez.
we're going to convince her, pressure her into charge. You know, that's how dirty this gets. But when you're dealing with nation state versus nation state, or nation state versus an important executive here, that's when things get really dirty.
Well, we hope you enjoyed part 1 of the special episode with James Scott.
Be sure you guys tune in next week for part 2 with James, where he unveils even more crazy things you guys need to know about.
Until then, we'll see you guys out on the edge.